How you doing today, Mr. Sondheim? Today we're talking about oligopolies. So basically what an oligopoly is basically a market that is controlled by a very few amount of businesses or companies. They basically control the whole thing. Now, they tend to do two things. They tend to be competitive or they tend to work together. And the best example of that is OPEC. And when they work together, they become a cartel, and they do this thing called collusion. And this makes them more like monopolies because they work together to get the best prices. So like, let's say for OPEC, they all work together and they hold oil to increase the price. Because it's 12 countries and they have 80% of the world's oil reserves. Now the issue with cartels is it's hard to maintain. Because as the oil prices increase, you're going to have that one person that's like, starts flooding the market with all their oil so they get all the profit. Because the barrel of oil is $30, you're going to start selling a lot more to make that money. So they have an incentive to break out of that. Or they start selling their oil at lower prices so they make more money. So they always have an incentive to break that. That's what I mean. Yeah, they sell at low prices. So they always have an incentive to break out of that cartel and do their own thing and capitalize on the increased prices. Or, for example, you can have a duopoly like Coke and Pepsi. And they have a huge majority of the market, but they're always competing against each other. And that makes it better for everybody because they could collude and make the prices $10 a can for both of them. But instead, they're always competing. Same thing with airlines. But another thing you can have is airlines, for example, is price leadership. And price leadership is if, let's say, American Airlines increase their prices for cargo, then all the other companies will follow suit because they would all be making more money. If they all increase prices, then everyone has to pay those prices. So that's why you have price leadership. So if they decrease their price, well, everybody's going to start going to the airline with the lower price. So they will follow suit. And also, airlines are also unique because, their Class C seats are all undifferentiable. Like, they're all the same. So they become more like perfectly more like in the area of perfect competition. And it's also more efficient when they're also way more competitive because it keeps everything like the price is low when they're more to perfect competition because like a monopoly, they're price makers when they head over in that direction, which you can see with OPEC. Now, they're all interdependent, meaning what one company does is going to affect the other companies. So what I mean by that is like when I'm talking about the airlines, if they decrease their price, well, that's going to affect everybody else's and how much revenue they make. So that's like kind of the two sides. So one leaning towards monopoly, and the one leading towards perfect competition. We have the competition and that keeping the price. Well, the issue with competition and oligopolies is they don't like to mess with like the price of the product. And that is due because they understand that if they keep lowering the price down, trying to price cut each other, they're not going to make a lot of money. So what they tend to do is have like a marketing, do like they like to use their other things about the company to make them stand out. Like Coke and Pepsi, it just depends on your preference. And that's because like of the marketing that they've done. So they're trying to make one product seem better than the other one without messing with the price. So in that case, they get more customers thinking that their product is better, but they don't have to lower the price so they don't lose money. So that's how they kind of like compete. They don't compete with the prices. They compete with like marketing and try to differentiate themselves and things of that nature. Now, we gotta come over to price matrix and talk about Nash equilibrium and game theory. Basically, game theory is just a strategy that you use when trying to figure out what prices or what decisions to make. And a very simple yet common one is the prisoner's dilemma. So let's say I have prisoner one and prisoner two, and I can either deny or confess. Now let's say we both. Oh, hold up. I apologize. Wait, that is yeah. All right. So if they both deny, they both get 10 years. Now, if he confesses, prisoner two goes free, and the other person gets 30 years. Now, if he over here confesses and he denies, free 30 years, and then they both confess, it's 20 years. Now, when we're talking about Nash equilibrium, it's the end result that happens in the situation while also taking into effect everybody else's decision. Now, looking at this, the most optimal point is here, 10 years, 10 years. But let's say you do not know this person at all, and you got to take into account their decision. Well, you don't know them. Are they going to deny or are they going to confess? So their dominant strategy or the best strategy they have is to both confess. Because let's say you confess and he denies, you go free. And he's thinking the same way. Now, if y'all both confess, y'all both get 20 years instead of the 30 years. It is the best decision, and that is the Nash equilibrium. Now, when we get into examples of companies, let's say we have Marvel Comics and we have DC Comics. And Marvel trying to decide if they're going to do Jarvis or the Mandarin, and DC is deciding between Joker or Alfred. Now, by looking at this, which number is better? 300, 200, 500, and 800. Now, when we're looking at this, you can tell right here by looking at the price matrix that DC makes the most money with Joker with 500 and 800. But Marvel makes the most money if DC goes with Alfred. They can go with Jarvis for 300 or Mandarin for 200. But you can see one simple thing. If DC is making the most money at 500 and 800, that's the strategy they should always go with, because it beats Jarvis and it beats the Mandarin and makes them the most money. It is their dominant strategy, because Marvel has something that can beat that when looking at the graph. So when they're taking in a decision, they know that most likely they're going to go with the Joker. And the best thing they could do is go with the Mandarin. And that is going to be the Nash equilibrium, because it's the best point where they can both make a profit while also taking in the other person. And it's where the market is most likely to go to. It's the end result. As you can see, because the Mandarin is going to be 300 and the Joker is going to be 500. And DC has a dominant strategy because in both cases they make the most money going with the Joker against both of these. Now moving on to this last one. This is kind of where they both have dominant strategies. So you have Brandon and you have Stan, and they're both selling their prices at either high or low. Now, the optimal place is to both sell high and you get 200. But if you tell if they both sell high, then Stan can just go low. And bam, takes all that money. And if he goes low and Brandon goes high, that's 350. But if, let's say, once again they go high and high, and Brandon sees that, and Brandon goes low, and his competitor's high is 350. So their dominant strategy is to go low, which leads to this being the socially optimal point was also the worst money-wise, where they both end up having 80. And this is right here also is where they both have the dominant strategy, and this is where they both have a dominant strategy. They just end up making 80 and 80. So they both just go low. That's what's always going to happen, because if one person goes high, the other person is going to go low and make more money. And then if the other person goes high, they both go low, and then they both go low, because that's the best thing they can do. When one person goes low, also go low, and you have 80 and 80, and that is when they both have dominant strategy, and that is everything.